This episode of Q Point Podcast is pre-recorded, produced and sponsored by Corenna and Quirk, broker at Next Home Experience.
Different views.
I know your story.
From different Q's.
Incredible job.
He's David Quirk.
You brought it up.
And she's Corenna Quirk.
Imagine.
This is
Q Point.
Thank you for joining us for part 2 with Andre Cushing, president of the Maine County Commissioners Association and chair of the Penobscot County Commissioners.
Other than property tax, how else do you get revenue?
The county gets most of its operating revenue from the property taxpayer. We do have a segment which is roughly about maybe a quarter, 20 to 25%, that comes from other sources. Some of that is the community contracts for policing. Some of that is the money received from the state for jails. Some of it is the revenue that comes from the Registry of Deeds. We take in all of the real estate transactions and things that have to be done. 10% of the transfer tax and funds that come in stay with the county for operating that. So that's a small amount of revenue. It's about $1.2 million a year. But really, we're at the mercy of the state because we started at 20% funding of jails through the state funds. Because that's been flat for the last 5 years, it's now down to under 15% of the cost of operating all the jails comes from the state. And there's this thing called the jail cap, which was put in place when the state consolidated jails, that prohibits us from raising more than a certain amount to operate the jail from the property taxpayer. That's what led to Penobscot County having this growing deficit that we had to deal with in the budget. What we talked about earlier, that $3.5 million we had to recapture, was deficit between what we can collect and get from the state and what the actual costs are. And while you would like to think, well, you can't raise enough money, so you cut your expenses, we're mandated to a certain level of service and certain number of jail corrections officers. The costs associated with that is about 68% of the budget. We can't send people home when we hit a budget. We have to take care of those folks. If we have these overtime issues with people at the hospital, those are unanticipated expenses that roll into that cost of operating the jail. So it's a model that we can talk about in context of the whole state system that is really dysfunctional and is putting an undue burden on the property taxpayers of our state. They're being asked to pay more and more because the state is not stepping in and doing what they promised to do.
As president of the Maine County Commissioners Association, what does that role entail?
Each state has an association for their county operations. And in Maine, we have a Maine County Commissioners Association. The 16 counties have representatives on our board of directors. We advocate at the legislature for issues that impact counties. We provide some resources internally to train and share best practices. It's really another voluntary role, but I'm honored to have been chosen for the last 2 years to serve in that role. And I see the opportunity because we have a very unique situation. Over a dozen of the county commissioners are former legislators, so they understand what went on. People like Salwin Millett, Garrett Mason, Tom Saviello, Patsy Crockett in Kennebec County, Charlie Crosby down in Saginaw, Justin Chenette in York. So I'd say that most of the counties have a legislator that understands the process in Augusta. That's been our secret weapon in the last 2 years, to go down there and have people who know the process explain things. We've made some good success in the Criminal Justice Committee, educating them on what's going on with county jails and why we need their support to go to the legislature for more money.
Speaking of money, is the state doing its job as paying all the municipalities as far as some of the jails?
The way the system is set up, David, is jails were consolidated in 2008 because the state under Governor Baldacci was looking for ways to reduce costs. They created a board, the Jail Standards Council, that had commissioners, sheriffs, and municipal representatives to kind of govern the policies and look for efficiencies in the system. What happened out of that was shortly thereafter the state gave the jails back to the counties to operate. They left in place some of the statutory language capping how much revenue we can generate from the property tax. And as you've seen from some of the information I gave you, the vast majority of costs in a county are related to the sheriff's department and the jail. About 45-50% of a county budget is related to the jail operations. And unlike the Holiday Inn or the Hilton Garden Inn, when we're full, we can't say, we can't take you anymore. We're obligated to take anyone brought to us by a local municipal law enforcement, state agencies, be they game wardens, state police, IF&W Marine Patrol, or federal. If people are arrested, we book them regionally into the county jails and they're held there because towns generally don't have the holding facilities. So there's that dynamic and the dynamic of increased costs because labor is your biggest cost, but healthcare is second to that. And as we deal with these evolving problems where jails are now generally the largest mental health and substance use facility, substance use disorder, drug use disorder that goes on in your area, they're having to shoulder that medical expense because people, when they're arrested and convicted, lose their medical coverage through federal or state Maine care or Medicaid programs. So that's another factor that's added the cost. The jails historically were given a certain amount of money by the state. It's statutorily mandated. That has remained pretty much constant for the last 10 years. So the result is, as costs go up, you got to get the money from somewhere. It either comes from the property taxpayer or it has to be state funds. And being part of the criminal justice system in the state, we need to be constantly reminding the legislature, we're doing a duty for you here. You need to fulfill your obligation by upping what you're paying. Let's look at the here and now. There's a supplemental budget before the legislature right now. They're having hearings on using $248 million of what's considered extra revenue that has come in. So to take a step back, we have what people call the Rainy Day Fund. Officially, it's called the Budget Stabilization Fund. It was set up for those bad times so you'd have something to cushion you. You can, under statute, have, I believe it's $1.4 billion in that account. After that, you've got to dispense the money. They have determined that in the last year, they have another $248 million that has come in excess of that cap that they have to allocate to have a balanced budget by June 30th. So this budget, with $248 million to spend in excess of what was already budgeted, has not included 1 cent for county jails.
I guess my question to you, wouldn't it make more sense rather than giving the checks back for $300 to give it back to this situation so it would lower property tax or not increase property tax?
You'll get no argument from me on that one. The reality is you have to educate legislators. In fairness, I was down there. You got all kinds of things going on. So there's all kinds of people asking you for this, asking you for that. They want to help the housing. They want to help the homeless. They want to help where some of the federal money has been cut back. That's noble, but this is an ongoing operation. This is like keeping the lights on and the heat on in your house. You've got to pay for that or you jeopardize everything else. While we don't think county corrections is flashy, it's not something people think we like spending money on a school or a civic center or some other community event. It is a necessary part of what people expect. They expect good roads, they expect education, and they expect public safety. So to do that, we need the partnership of the state. Right now, we're getting $20.4 million as statutorily predicated. We were able to convince them to add $4 million in several years ago to help with medically assisted treatment for inmates. That is going away, and we will be short $4 million in the budget starting July 1st if the legislature does not step up and provide additional funding. Realistically, we should be looking at $8 million more to get to $20.8 million because that would get us back to that 20% funding model. So in this legislature, we are respectfully asking for another $4 million because we got 4 last year. So that would put us at 28.4 for fiscal year 25-26. On July 1st, 26-27, we're looking for $8 million to maintain that 28.4, if that makes sense.
And yet bills like LD 2124 keep coming about.
That is another conundrum. As you mentioned, last year they had a bill, well-intentioned, to fund housing because the speaker is very passionate about getting more housing built in Maine. And it certainly is an issue. Those of us who are realtors love the idea of more housing. But the reality is you've got obligations that you have to meet. And when you take a portion of the revenue from the county, as they did in that bill last year, they took 0.8%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's over $800,000 statewide that they're taking away from counties that have no other resources besides the property tax to count on. This year, there's another act, 2124, to put a portion of that county share of the transfer tax into an account for homeless shelters. Again, we have to deal with that issue. We need a funding mechanism. They say, well, you got the mansion tax, that new tax on $1 million plus properties. We did, but not equally across all the counties. So you'll have some counties that will remain static with their revenue. You'll have some counties that will be losers under this plan. And there's no guarantee that $1 million houses are going to come up as frequently as some people may think. That may be good in some of your more urbanized counties or coastal counties, but for Piscataquis County, northern Penobscot County, there's not a lot of $1 million properties.
It might come up because I see one of the Democrats who's running for governor wants to double property tax on vacation homes. And I'm sure if your property tax goes from $30,000 to $60,000 because you live out of state, I'm sure some of those people might sell.
It's a great talking point, especially in this world where we want to punish people for their success and hard work. And frankly, universities, hospitals, community parks, little leagues, if it wasn't for the generosity of families like yours and others across the state who have given, we wouldn't have some of those things.
But it's easy in today's world to point at somebody who's, quote, a rich person and say they need to pay their fair share. There's a lot of people in society today who get a lot more through government benefits and other programs than those of us who go out there and work hard. The point is, you can't pick winners and losers if you're an elected official. You have to be smart about how you do things. And if you want to have certain programs and you want to address them, then you need to find ways to do that through the general funds. Case in point, the state of Maine receives 90% or 90.8% now of the transfer taxes that are generated. That means that $50 million last year went to the general fund while municipalities struggle on that 10% that they get. So where is the equity in that if you're getting $50 million and you add a millionaire's tax, which is estimated to generate $12 million, but you're going to take another chunk out of the 10% or 9.2 that counties get and give it away to another fund? It's just putting more burden on the property taxpayer.
You are listening to Q Point Podcast. I'm Corenna Quirk, co-hosting with my husband, David Quirk, and we are having a conversation with Andre Cushing, president of the Maine County Commissioners Association and chair of the Penobscot County Commissioners. Realistically, how much influence do county commissioners have when legislation is being shaped?
It's a great question. If you think of our form of government, it's different than other countries. Power evolves from the citizens up. So the closer you are, whether you're a local municipal government or a county government, you're going to stand in the grocery store with ice cream melting in your hand talking to somebody about a problem they have. So you're more connected than people, with all due respect, I was in Augusta, but you're more connected to some of those issues with local elected officials than you are with state or federal elected officials. And I think Susan Collins is always willing to be there and listen to folks, as are some of our other federal delegation. But the key to this is we need to be better educators for our local officials. I've had lunch with State Representative Fredette, who represents my town, Newport. We're fortunate to have two members of the Appropriations Committee from Penobscot County, Representative Reyna from Bangor being the other one. And I know the sheriff has engaged with her, and she really seems interested in understanding this problem, as does Representative Fredette. But in my conversations, I realized just how much he did not understand about the problems with county government. And in addition to being a legislator, he's an attorney. So it just highlighted for me, we need to take it step by step. We need to educate them as to what the challenges are. County jails are like an emergency room. You never know who's coming, how long they're going to be there, what condition they're in. You need to be prepared for that, and you need the financial resources to cover things that go on, because there are unexpected overtime costs. There are medical costs that we can't always budget for. And for me, the most important part of this is getting people in Augusta who will talk in terms
Easy enough for the legislature to
understand. We can't throw lots of facts and figures at them. Simple answer is you used to do 20%.
of the cost of county jails. You're now down under 15%. Don't you think it's time to bounce that back up? You've given other departments, including corrections,
Increases every year. We've been flat funded for the last 5 years. You're putting that on the property taxpayer. So as president of the Maine County Commissioners Association, there's a couple things that I've been focusing on. One, building stronger relationships between the sheriffs, the administrators, and Maine Municipal, because we're all part of this. We all are affected by this. The second thing is educating the legislators as to what county government is and can be doing. A lot of times they look at us and say, well, you guys just collect money and we don't know what you do with it. Well, in some counties, we are now offering assessing services for towns. It goes back to the challenge that many municipalities and, in fact, private companies like you are facing. There's a shortage in the workforce. And beyond that, not to be disrespectful, but because of the turnover, the people who've retired or left government, the historical knowledge, that institutional memory isn't there. So new people coming in are on a huge learning curve. We need to be a resource for municipal government. We need to be looking at our citizens' needs and saying, what can we do? You've got Cumberland that's been a leader in this. They've been doing dispatching for other departments besides EMS. They've been doing government assistance programs down in Cumberland County. I'm not saying that all counties should pick this up, but the point is we need to be smart about how we work with our municipal partners. Code enforcement, assessing, animal control, taking care of these cemeteries that are out there. Plowing the roads doesn't have to stop at the town line. There can be more collaborative ways to deal with the public works issues. There are things in the offices with clerical and auditing and providing the resources that you're obligated to provide as a municipal government. Dealing with tax collections, registering cars. There are efficiencies in using technology. And that's another area that I've been encouraging our counties to look at. We in Penobscot County are the busiest 911 call center in the state. We take 69,000 emergency calls every year. We also take non-emergency calls. And I was stunned when I found out from our director that the same live trained operators that were taking these emergency calls and dealing with the challenges people were facing were taking 250,000 non-emergency calls per year. So you've just finished up dispatching an ambulance to emergency. And the next call is Fred up in Alton. Hey, how you doing? I got a dead raccoon out in front of the house. Can you give me the animal control officer's number? So we went to Amazon Web Services. They have an intuitive system for non-emergency calls. So if Fred calls up and said, hey, I got a dead raccoon, I need the animal control officer, the system texts him the name and number. So it takes that live person right out. Now, it's intuitive in that if somebody calls that number by mistake and they're agitated or crying, it senses that and immediately sends them to a 911 operator. But for the pedestrian type calls, I got a light out, I need to talk to so-and-so, it will give you a system to do that.
How many employees do you have at the dispatching?
We are rated for 34 employees. That would include all of the people who are the call takers. There's two different levels, the people who take the calls, the people who dispatch that are trained at a slightly higher level.
Then you have your administrative people. So it's 34 positions there. We have a total in Penobscot County of around 250 employees between corrections, patrol, our other departments, EMA, and 911. So as part of county government, another role that I neglected to mention earlier is the district attorney's office. Most district attorneys serve at least 2 counties. There might be a bigger one like Cumberland or York where that's it. But you've got Chris Almy, who has been our DA for many years. He serves Piscataquis
and Penobscot. So they are the prosecuting division for the criminal justice system. And they have a staff that operates out of the county courthouse and takes care of those cases and negotiates with the lawyers. So they are an important part of county government. And all of these parts of the criminal justice system really rely heavily on county government. In some counties, your actual courtrooms are in the county courthouse. There are some, like Bangor, that now has a new judicial center because of the volume, but they used to be located in our county courthouse and what's now the post office next door.
Well, you also oversee the Registry of Deeds, which as a realtor, I use quite often. And when you go county to county, it's so different. Is there a way that they could all use the same system?
Yes and no. Yes, they could logistically. There are challenges because some people have contractual relationships with one provider or not. I think you know, too, that many municipalities have gone to a system where you can look up the property records and tax commitments online. That's incredibly helpful if you're working on a deal Saturday afternoon, or in some of these small towns. I've got some towns that I've gone to that they're only open twice a week. And if that person's busy, they may not be able to answer the phone or get you that information right off. So yes, through the Registry of Deeds, you've got a very strong network of the registers themselves that are always working to both improve the efficiency of what they deliver and secure the information. That's a big thing now. You've heard on the radio or television about these people who are having their title stolen.
Yes, deed fraud.
Fortunately, they have developed systems in state that will notify you. Here in Maine, I know there's several counties that have a notification that if there's a transaction that comes up, you get an email or a text. Those are the services that county government is also providing to protect folks, as well as cybersecurity protections. And it's really amazing, the old books, if you go way back in time when the books were maps inbound, they have to preserve those for the posterity and for the ability to track things back to their original site. So there's a lot of services that go on, and they're very concerned because microfiche is disappearing, how they're going to assure that digital records are as secure and protected as hard copies are. So there's a lot of things that we ask of our county officials that the average public doesn't even understand. And we're blessed here in Penobscot County to have Susan Boulay, who's got over 30 years of experience and runs a really tight ship down there. Some of the other counties have long-serving folks, but I worry about what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years when some of these long-serving people disappear. And as president of the association, I'm looking at what are our succession plans that we're mapping out. What are we doing to make sure that we're bringing quality people in? Because as folks have heard in the news, some counties have had financial difficulties because the folks in charge of their finances were not as knowledgeable and capable in handling things. There are several counties that have had financial mishaps because of that. Washington, sadly, has been the poster child for that. And the tough thing is all 3 of those commissioners there have only been in office really for the last year to 2 years. They did not create some of these problems. And that's not to throw stones at people who served in the past, but you have long-serving folks, and as time goes on, things happen and they don't stay up to date, and life moves on, and sometimes it's like they say, either you eat the bear or the bear eats you. And some folks have been eaten by the bear.
So in that situation, since you are president of the association, are they calling you for advice?
Well, like in real estate, you want to be the source of the source, not the source. So yes, there are a number of calls from commissioners. I try to provide them resources or suggestions, but we really need to clean up the system. And part of that is going to take place starting this summer after the legislature's done. We have a joint group of sheriffs, administrators, and county commissioners who are going to sit down and look at Title 30 and determine, are there some positions that we should update? Are there some positions that should be more appropriately appointed people with skill sets and experience as opposed to just electing those folks? So those are some of the important parts of looking at the role of county government. and continuing this relationship with municipalities to find more ways to collaborate on the things that we have to do, as well as finding the resources so that we don't have to rely on the state all the time. It's like Oliver Twist going forward and, please, can I have some more porridge? We can't be doing that because the legislature turns over. And getting back to that education part, if you're constantly having to educate them, you need to create some systems that they're not on autopilot, but they're keeping pace with the changes in society and the changes of the economy.
So can you give us an update? What is going on with Washington County?
They have had 3 commissioners who've worked diligently to resolve the problem. The bank that they deal with there was understanding of the challenge that these guys were facing, so they gave them an extension on this last year, 2025's TAN, because you're supposed to pay that back by the end of the year. They were able to finally pay that back through cooperation of some of the towns helping with prepayment of taxes. They have then taken out their 2026 TAN, which allows them to have the operating money until they start to get the taxes in. But it will be a longer term condition for Washington and several others, including Penobscot, to rebuild those monies that we've had to use. While it was not all the county jail that impacted them, that and some of the expenses related to the county that were not accurately recorded in the budgets resulted in some of this deficit. They have a good team in place in their finance department now. The former treasurer did resign. They've brought in somebody as an interim treasurer who is very dedicated. Frankly, it's a passion for her to help solve these problems, so they're in a fortunate position. But it will take them a number of years to correct the financial picture in Washington County and have the proper reserves in place. Penobscot is facing some of those same challenges because of our jail deficit, the size of it, and it's going to take us a while. So what we have done is we've put together an advisory committee, which is made up of town officials, not just elected, but finance directors, managers, and they are going to review our budget process, and they are also going to advise us on how to move to a July 1st, what's called a fiscal year budget. That will shorten the amount of time until we get our tax payments. So we're looking at maybe 3 months before we get our allotment. And as we build that model, we'll get to a point where we potentially won't have to borrow money any longer, which is good for us because it's less pressure on the taxpayers. And we have in Penobscot the potential of building a new correctional facility, so there'll be some debt service there. The good news is because we already have a portion of our budget that goes to boarding, and those costs won't have to be accrued, that money will be able to shift over to cover a large portion of the debt service when we get the final number.
Is the state paying Washington County their 20%?
The 20% that we talked about is down to about 15.6. So they get paid. It's a model not unlike what happens in schools where you get paid per pupil. Based upon the number of people you have in your jail at any given period is the calculation that you get out of those funds that the state allocates. So it's not a lump sum payment. It is paid based upon what your last quarter's jail population was.
I know you're a realtor, but what else are you working on?
The biggest part of life right now is my wife and I are blessed with 6 grandkids. So we love to see them. We got 4 in Florida and 2 here in Maine. And when they turn 9, they get to spend a week with Gigi and G-Pa at their place. So we just had our 9-year-old from Florida because he wanted to walk on a frozen lake. And we went ice fishing and we went tubing and he got to go snowboarding. And his cousins are in Brunswick, so they came up and we went bowling. So that's a big part of life. I do also work for a national organization for local and county officials, the American City County Exchange. So I do some traveling every month to other counties to observe what they do, to go to some of our conferences and share best practices and develop model legislation. And I'm committed this year, because I bought my fishing license just about every year, to get the fly rods out of the closet and go out and do some fishing, because that's something I always enjoyed from the days when my folks ran a campground and boating marina up on Ripagenis Lake. And in the downtime when we weren't cleaning out houses or pumping gas, we go out and do a little fishing.
So I'm looking forward to getting out there and doing that as well. Another part of my hobbies are political. I love Maine history, and I have started a collection which now includes almost every governor of Maine's signature on something, all but 3 of the United States senators who've served Maine, and I need about 40 more members of Congress. And it's kind of cool to go through what was going on during the time that they served. The Civil War, of course, was a significant part of Maine's history. We sent more people per capita to serve in the Army during that period than any other state in the nation. And you had some amazing people like Oliver Otis Howard and Selden Connors and Joshua Chamberlain, who in himself is an amazing figure in Maine's history. Came right across the river, Brewer, Maine, that's where he grew up. Went to Bowdoin College, met Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin, and that solidified his abolitionist beliefs, and that's why he went and served in the Army. And he offered himself up, and they were giving him the opportunity to command the 20th Maine. He declined it because he didn't feel he had enough experience. So an officer by the name of Adelbert Ames from Thomaston, Maine, who was wounded at the Battle of Bull Run, the first significant conflict, was recovering in Maine and was giving command, and he brought Chamberlain into his tent and would teach him different military tactics so that he was better prepared. And as we all know, he served an amazing role at the Battle of Gettysburg on the far left flank. Preventing the Confederates from rolling up the line could have been a different story without him.
Absolutely. So what is this seal that you came across through Charlie Summers? Tell us about that.
I had the privilege when Charlie Summers became Secretary of State of joining him on his tour of the archives, and we got to see the original 1820 Constitution of the state of Maine. It's on parchment, it's hand-drawn, it's an amazing document. And then in addition to that, while we were there, the archivist brought out another file, and it was the original handwritten report by Joshua Chamberlain of the after action on July 2nd at Gettysburg, what he wrote about having to defend the far left flank. So what kind of got me started, during that tour with Charlie Summers, I came across a document that was being produced, and it was a letter that had the state seal on it, and it was to Governor Cobb. And at that point, the daughters of James G. Blaine owned the mansion, which is now the state governor's mansion. And it was the letter bequeathing that building and the assets in it to the state of Maine as a governor's residence. It was pretty amazing to come across that.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So that's my hobby that I continue to enjoy, learning about history, because if you regard what went on in history, you can make better decisions and not make some of the same mistakes.
Andre Cushing, President of the Maine County Commissioners Association and Chair of Penobscot County Commissioners, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure.
It's been an honor. Thank you for giving me the time to share on county government.
Yes, thank you very much. You've been listening to Q Point.
Follow us at qpointpodcast.com or on your favorite streaming app.
This is where you can get the news from the people who make the news.
Make sure to join us next time.
We hope you tune in.
Q Point Podcast invites guests and candidates from all parties to join the conversation. The views, information, opinions, and comments expressed during this program do not necessarily represent those of the host, Q Point Podcast, associates, affiliates, and CQRE LLC.
Thanks for being a part of the conversation. The most important voices aren't always the loudest ones. They're the voices of everyday people, raising families, running businesses, serving their towns. That's who we want to hear from. Share your ideas with us online, and let's make sure those voices are never left out. Find us on Facebook or on X or at qpointpodcast.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Catch every episode at qpointpodcast.com or wherever you stream. Tune in and tell your friends.